Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Manjiri Nadkarni, Ayurvedic MD, registered holistic nutritionist, back today for day 51. So, we have completed over 50 days of 100 days of Ayurveda. So we are halfway through. And for day 51, I wanted to do something special. So a lot has been said about menopause. You learn a lot of things about menopause when you search online, but not a lot of discussions occur around the whole phenomena of andropause. So that's exactly what we're going to discuss today. So I can see a few people signed up here. Uttam ji, hello, nice to see you. Usha ji, hello, nice to see you. So if you are watching this live, you can put a hashtag live or just say a quick hi so I know you're here. If you are watching this as a replay, please post a hashtag as replay. And at any point of time, if you have any questions for me related to this topic, any other topic, you can always post it in the comments. And please make sure you tag me so I am extreme, like I can definitely, find these. Uh, find the questions and not miss any of those. I'm just going to plug in my computer. I've been having a fun tech day today, trying to figure out the technical systems. Yeah, so let's get talking about andropause. So for those who are unfamiliar with andropause, right, it's the female equivalent, male equivalent to menopause is what we talk about, right? So as women age and they end up losing a lot of their hormones naturally because the hormones wane when you go to a different life stage. The same thing occurs in men, right? And the main male hormone testosterone starts diminishing after a certain age, right? But what we're also seeing in today's world is that it's starting much like the waning of the hormones is starting much faster or much earlier in life. So an example is women typically hit menopause around 45-50, but as we are seeing early menopause, we're also seeing a lot of early andropause, right? And it could be attributed to the stress levels, it could be attributed to a poor lifestyle, a poor diet. So these are all the factors that we're going to discuss today, right? And when we talk about andropause, so what exactly are we talking about? So andropause is a phase in man's life, right, where there is decrease in the production of hormones, particularly all the reproductive hormones or the male hormones. So when we talk about it, it can start anywhere from the age of 30 to 65. So they say that after the age of 30, every year, there's a 1% decrease in testosterone. So statistically, it ends up being 1%, but it can be a lot more than just 1% depending on your diet and your lifestyle. And one of the reasons that we are so concerned about the whole concept of andropause is that it's not just something that's affecting your physical body, right? And it's not just something that, okay, the testosterone lowers, but it's also going to lower your muscle mass, right? It's also going to lower your immunity, it's also going to change your mood, right? It's also going to create a lot more symptoms in your body and a lot more concerns in your body. And that is one of the reasons why we should be really like looking into what happens during menopause and what's the management for it, right? So a few reasons we can discuss. I'm just going to look at my notes quickly because it is a long topic and I didn't want to go out of notes, out of track. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so a few reasons when we talk about diet, when we talk about lifestyle, when we talk about stress. So a lot of the times not like people don't really know what causes the whole andropause thing, but there are two concepts or two things to understand behind it. One is the actual reduction of the production of testosterone. So you're not producing as much testosterone as before. And At the same time, the other factor could be there is a lot of binding of the testosterone, and so there's not much free hormone circulating, right? So the hormone is not available, and that can create a lot of different issues, right? So when we talk about clinical manifestations, there are changes in mood, there is decrease in focus, there is decrease in memory, there's decrease in intellectual capacity sometimes. People feel fatigued, so there is depression, there could be accompanying anger, there is decrease in libido, sexual desire, erectile dysfunction may also occur. Skin thickness, like there could be, your skin might start getting thinner, you might start losing a lot of physical energy. Muscle mass, which is one of the most important things, right? Because testosterone is also responsible for your muscle strength, and having lowered muscle mass in your body could be one of the cause. Any central body fat, right? So having a lot of fat deposition in the midsection of your body could happen if you are undergoing through andropause. And mineral bone density, when we talk about osteoporosis, right, this can also occur in men. So you start losing the bone minerals as well during andropause, and because of the diminishing testosterone, because testosterone is also responsible for facial hair and body hair, so the hair can also, like, you start getting scantier. So these are a few things that could occur when we're talking about andropause. And yeah, so there could be different reasons. The one of the things could be a really poor diet, right? So when you have an extremely poor diet, when you have an extremely like fattier diet, which is saturated, rich in saturated fats, right? When you're not getting enough minerals, when you're not getting enough zinc, when you're not getting enough B vitamins, which are also necessary. So this could be one of the reasons why you are going through early andropause or going through andropause. The other factor, which is extremely common when we talk about stress, people are like, okay, why does she talk about stress all the time, or why does she connect stress with every single thing? But when we talk about stress, there's a long-term stress hormone known as cortisol, right? Which is a derivative of cholesterol. So cholesterol is what everybody talks about. Oh, you shouldn't be having cholesterol. Cholesterol can create heart attacks and all that, which is a big myth. I'll be talking about cholesterol in another video soon. But when we talk about cholesterol, cholesterol is necessary for production of hormones as well, which not a lot of people realize. So when you are having ample amounts of good cholesterol or good functioning cholesterol in your body, you can produce, different hormones. But one of the things is if you're lacking a lot of the good cholesterol, that is one factor. The other factor is if you are under a lot of stress, the mechanism of hormone production shunts and you end up making a lot more cortisol instead of making testosterone, right? So when we discussed menopause, we discussed similar factors where a woman, instead of making progesterone, she ends up making a lot of cortisol. So the same in men, you end up making a lot more cortisol rather than testosterone, and that itself can be a cause where your testosterone in the body can be lowered, right? So that's one of the most common causes when we talk about stress. In Ayurveda, we talk about akal jara, so jara or aging, and in Ayurveda, there's like a whole system which talks about rasayan and vajikaran. So rasayan are tissues, are certain herbs that are going to feed different levels of tissues, right? So we have this 7 layers of tissues or 7 tissue layers, and the 7th one is known as shukra dhatu or reproductive fluids, and testosterone is one of the parts of it, right? So when we talk about food that you eat, when you eat a certain food, it has to get converted and purified 7 times, and the 7th tissue that's formed is known as shukra, and the 8th essence, which is derived from shukra and all other tissues, is known as ojas or vitality, right? So semen is such a purified form. When you talk about semen or reproductive fluids or reproductive hormones, they are like super purified in the body, right? And if you end up wasting a lot of those, excessive like sexual intercourse, or even excessive physical exertion, because you are also going to need the same hormone for a lot of repair work in the body too, right? So if you are exhausted beyond your boundaries, if you are completely, pushing your physical body to the limit, what ends up happening is, instead of producing the whole testosterone, you're going to produce a lot more cortisol, right? So that's one factor we talk about, is stress, which is going to completely shunt. And stress doesn't always have to be emotional or psychological, it can always also be physical. So that's the one part. The second part is excessive, you know sexual intercourse, right? If you're indulging too much, or um, beyond capacity, so that can also lead to a lot of tissue loss. The third one is when we talk about shukra, or the semen, or reproductive fluids, especially the male kinds, it is extremely similar to the qualities of kapha dosh, kapha dosh, or when we talk about even milk as a tissue, or ojas as the vitality, right? So if you are having lots of vata aggravation, if you are having lots of vata derangement in the body, right? So a lot of anxiety, or you have lots of dryness in the body, if you have like joint aches and joint pains, and you are losing a lot of muscle tissue, you're losing a lot of body tissues, whether it's blood, whether it's plasma, whether it's, because one tissue is going to feed into other, and any excess sudden loss is going to derange your vata from the body and completely dry you out. So that is also one of the factors which can lead to earlier andropause. Then there is a really nice, textual reference where we talk about, shukrakshay, or the loss of the reproductive fluids and tissues, right? So any excess envy, excessive, if you are having a lot of fever or inflammation in the body, if you have too much inflammation, when we talk about jvara or excess inflammation, that can also create, um, that your tissues aren't formed well, any kind of fear, terror, anger, grief. So excessive emotions, or too much stress on your emotional body as well, can also lead to depletion of this shukra. And when we talk about fasting, right, and a lot of the times, people start fasting or starvation, there are some like really strict diets where you're completely starving yourself, you're not eating for a few days, doing one cleanse or the other, and that can also create a lot of issues when it comes to your shukra dhatu. And as Uttamji is saying, BP meds are slow and sure number one killer of men. The other one is also cholesterol medication, right? Because cholesterol is also necessary for a lot of repair work in the body. Cholesterol is also necessary for a certain functions of the body, like producing cortisol and producing your hormones. So if you are on cholesterol medications for a long time, or that's how they work, they're also going to stop the production of cholesterol, and that can also result in loss of libido, is also one of the main side effects, right, when we look at cholesterol medication. So these are some factors that are extremely important for you to know. The other one is also that when we talk about kidney diseases or any kind of liver diseases, so if you have any other existing functions, pathological things going on in your body, right? So that can also create issues in the body. So when we talk about liver disease, so if you have chronic liver disease, if your liver is constantly overloaded, if you are an alcoholic, right? And it is a myth that alcohol for a short time, it can help be an aphrodisiac just because you're loosening up. It doesn't really have a technically aphrodisiac effect, but over a long term, alcohol is going to impact your libido and also drop down your testosterone levels, and that has also been studied, right? So any chronic liver disease is going to decrease your free testosterone, right? And if you don't have free testosterone, the testosterone is not going to go to the target sites. If it's bound up with something else, right, if it's bound up by sex hormone binding globulin, it's known as SHBG. I'm not going to talk about too complicated terms, I'm trying not to, but if it is bound, it's not usable. Free, anything that's free can just move about in your body and be utilized, but when it's bound, it's not going to be used. And that's what happens when you have any kind of liver disease or because of the increase in the sex hormone binding globulin, right? So there are different symptoms like sleep apnea syndrome, because you're not breathing well, you're not oxygenating well, that can also create lower testosterone levels, right? And obesity can also lead to sleep apnea. When we talk about male and female hormones, female hormone estrogen is also present in small amounts in men, right? So the quantity is not as much as in women, but it is also present in men. And if the ratio alters, so if you are having a lot of foods from plastic containers like BPA, right? The BPA acts as female hormones, right? So they're going to occupy the estrogen receptors, and then you see an increase in estrogen, right? And sometimes it can lead to gynecomastia, or men having breast formation. So that can also be one of the cause. And it's also going to lower your testosterone levels, right? When we look at both the hormones. The other cause is when you have a lot of obesity, right? So if you are gaining excess fat in your body, so when you are going to have excess fat, the excess fat hormone can also secrete estrogen, right? And that is one of the reason why excess estrogen or excess fat is also linked to certain kind of cancers. Estrogen is seen to be one of the main culprits when we talk about prostate cancer and even male kind of cancers. Certain cancers can be attributed to estrogen or high levels of estrogen in the body. And they're also finding the same link with prostate cancer, right? So you have to be extremely careful. And alcohol, Uttamji, male libido momentarily, what alcohol actually does is it kind of gets rid of the inhibitions that you have. So mentally, you start feeling a little bit more free. But eventually, if you look at the long term effects of it, it is going to decrease your libido, right? So it's not going to increase the libido over time. So that is something that's extremely important for everybody to know, that okay, wine temporarily, yes, it might help you relax a little bit, it might serve as an aphrodisiac, right? But eventually alcohol intake is going to decline, and there has been research, right, that eventually with alcohol intake it can diminish your libido and it can diminish your testosterone. Excess of fasting, right, is again, as I mentioned before, that it can also decrease your libido. Now when we talk about testosterone, usually in young adults, there's a peak in the morning and it falls about 35% during the day, right? So the serum testosterone, there is a definite fluctuation seen which changes as we age, right? And that is also important to understand. So I'm not going to get into too much, but diabetes is another common, right? If you have diabetes, if you have any other health conditions, um, existing health conditions, that can also lead to lower testosterone, right? And one of the most common pathology when we talk about a general pathology, because every disease will have a specific one, but most common pathology that I like explaining, and I know I'm talking about it over and over to make you understand, is any pathological condition, whether it's inflammation, it's going to increase your cortisol, which is your long-term stress hormone. So whether it's emotional stress, physical stress, increases your cortisol, and that's going to shunt away and take away from the testosterone production. So that is something that's extremely important to understand. So in Ayurveda, when we talk about Jara, right, Jara is aging, or natural concept of aging. Everybody ages, like that's the norm of life. And as I had mentioned when I was talking about menopause, that when we are born as children, till the time you're growing, the growth phase till the age of 16 or 25, however you want to count, and different acharyas counted differently. So when we talk about Acharya Charak, he said that till the age of 32, you are in your balyavastha, which means that you are still a child, you're still growing. And after the age, so right now we don't consider, because the lifespans have decreased, so maybe till the age of 20 to 25, right, you are still in your growth phase in the body. So that's marked by kapha dosh, right, which is dominant. So your in the growth phase, you need a lot of nourishment, and the kapha dosh is providing you with all that nourishment. As you go into the pitta phase, right? So when you are in your middle age, it's a lot of dynamic life, right? You are super active, you're ambitious, you're kind of chasing your dreams, and like you're on fire almost. So that fire type energy is given by pitta dosh, right? And that's going to fire you up, right? So that's also going to increase your tendencies towards stress sometimes, and that is also one of the reasons why, there's early andropause seen in today's world as well, right? And when you move from this pitta phase, as we start aging, what dosh starts taking over your body. So your body starts, like body tissue start getting depleted, body tissue start drying up, right? Your muscle mass starts, diminishing, collagen in your body can decrease as well. So different factors contribute to the growth of vata dosh in your body as you age. And vata dosh is dominant for, or it's known for its depletive action, right? So that's something to understand. So again, going back to the whole concept of Ayurveda, when we talk about Shukra, which is your reproductive tissues and your reproductive hormones and everything together, the characteristic of the Shukra dosh itself is like kapha, right? So it is cool, it is like a little slimy, it is soothing and all that to the body. It's extremely nourishing. So even if you have excess pitta, that is going to diminish. Even if you have excess vata, that's going to diminish, right? So if you are having a lot of anger, if you are having a lot of irritation, if you are eating foods that are creating a lot of heat in your body, right? And I also work with people for fertility, and I've also noticed that if you are working with furnaces, right, or if you're working in a temperature where there's a high temperature outside, in those cases you can also see male infertility, right, where men are unable to conceive because any of the high temperature is also detrimental to your sperm. So that's also can happen. So excess pitta is to be controlled as well. Excess vata, you have to balance it as well. And when we talk about kapha, right, so every pathogenesis could be based on vata, pitta, kapha, three doshas. So when we talk about kapha, what could also happen is if you're eating too much or if you're having an extremely poor diet, the body channels could be blocked, which could lead to secretion of hormones and all that. So if there are blockages, even though there is production, it's not going to move out, right? So that could also be one of the causes of um, not having enough testosterone, or sometimes the binding also increases with that, right? So okay, so mental blocks is what Ramachandra Kondaskar says. Yes, yeah, so mental blocks, if you have any mental emotional problems, that's always going to reflect on your physical body. So 100% that is going to create it, for sure. And Uttamji says momentary production of cortisol for auto fighting stops the production of formation of hormone. Yeah, so momentarily you need cortisol because it is also necessary for vital functions, right? So you also need cortisol, but if you're caught up in that fight flight mechanism constantly, right? So an example is in the olden days, you see a tiger or a bear and you run away, or you fight it out, or you just freeze, right? And if luckily the animal goes away for some reason, or you run away and you escape, your body then starts normalizing, right? But this normalizing response is not seen in today's world, unfortunately. So unfortunately, what happens is, okay, I'm late for meeting, then something else happens, then maybe my boss gets really angry for some project I didn't finish, then there's something else going on at home, then there's the COVID situation. So people are constantly triggered with this stress and anxiety, and that keeps happening constantly. And that is one of the reasons why, instead of the momentary or production of cortisol, it is like a continuous production of cortisol and cortisol and cortisol. And that is why you're also seeing people with larger waistlines today, right? So in addition to a poor diet and lifestyle, so people have refined sugar. We talk about refined sugar all the time. It also does lots of free radical damage. It can damage your arteries, it can damage your tissues, right? So any kind of refined sugar is going to create issues in your body. So these are some lifestyle factors, these are some dietary factors that are extremely common in today's world, and that need to be discussed. And no matter how much we discuss those, you always have to take care that you're maintaining a good lifestyle and diet, because no matter how much medicines, herbs you take, they are going to be wasted without having a good diet and lifestyle. So when we talk about andropause, there are certain symptoms seen differently according to the doshas that are present, that are causing it, right? So if you are having issues like depression or excess fatigue, or you're gaining a lot of body fat, that could also be caused by kapha, excess kapha in the body. If there's a lot of sweating or hot flashes, right, or sleep disturbances, now this is, and you're waking up in the middle of night from 1 to 3, that can be caused by pitta. And if you're having a lot of poor concentration, if you have decreased libido, if you have decreased muscle mass, excuse me, so you're actually losing, your muscle mass, you're developing osteoporosis, your joints start aching, right? So these are all characterized by vata dosh and issues pertaining to excess vata dosh. I'm just going to look for a quick comment as well. If you mismanage the heat condition, viral fever. Yes, exactly. That's perfect. So any other health conditions like viral fevers or something, if you are mismanaging or if you're not taking care of your body, excess pitta can obviously wreak a lot of havoc in your body, right? So this can create prakop or aggravation of one dosha or multiple doshas as well. And it can eventually decrease your testosterone production, right? And testosterone is also present in women. So this is something I just wanted to say. So women go through menopause, right? At that time, even there are some women who complain of, lack of libido, and they have certain other symptoms, hair loss and all that, and that can also be caused by testosterone, right? So while men are losing hair as well, women also can lose testosterone during menopause, because you need at least some testosterone in your body, whether you're a man or a woman, right, for good functioning. So when we talk about the management, when we're talking about the protocols or management, a few things to understand is, first, remove the causative factor. So if you are working in front of the heat, excess heat, like furnaces, or if your body is getting heated up, that's one of the cause. You can remove that, right? If you're having excess, drinking out of plastic bottles, right? So if you're having excess BPA, eating foods with pesticides that are creating a lot of excess estrogen in the body, take that cause out, right? Purifying your body. In Ayurveda, we do something called Panchakarma, or 5 purification procedures, which are also important. I do a lot of what is known as shaman treatment. So instead of a lot of purgations and stuff, especially in the Canadian environment, I prefer to do something called balancing your body, right? And then there are special categories of herbs known as rasayana. So rasayana herbs are herbs that are going to feed all the 7 layers of your tissues, and they are super potent, and that can go through micro channels and really nourish all of your tissues. Vajikaran is a specific branch of Ayurveda that deals with virility, right? So Vaji literally means a horse. So having a horse-like libido where you can last long is also one of the treatment protocols, in Ayurveda, and there's a whole branch that's dedicated to Vajikaran. So Ramachandra is saying vague dharan of acidity by taking, yeah, antacids is one thing, and vague dharana. So I try to keep it very simple, Ramchandra. So any of the urges, if you are suppressing a lot of natural urges, like even if you have to go for a bowel moment and you are controlling, you're like, okay, I can't go right now. If you have to go for urination and you're controlling, if you have to pass gas and you are kind of, it's rude to pass gas in front of, and you're kind of holding it, right? So when you hold any kind of urges, whether it's to sneeze or something, it is going to create a lot of vata aggravation in the body as well, right? It is extremely easy to have your vata dosh get out of balance, right? Because of the nature of vata itself, it is pretty easy to get out of balance. And that is something that should be controlled at all times. And that's also important to understand. So now that we've talked about causative factors and removal of causative factors, right? So one of the factors that you can do is develop a good lifestyle and a diet. So when we talk about waking up early and sleeping well at nighttime, resting, because the nighttime sleep is extremely important for your body to repair. Your body functions, start normalizing when you're sleeping well. All your hormones, like whatever is not necessary, is kind of thrown out of your body. Like all the reparative processes take place, but also detoxification cycles occur when you're in the resting phase, right? So your body can actually do its own job when you are sleeping. But if you're not having a good quality sleep, that is going to increase your vata dosh as well as pitta dosh both, right? So that will trigger anxiety, that will trigger also excess heat in the body. Sometimes you start feeling dizzy, and when your body is under that much physical stress, it will eventually lead to excess cortisol production as well. So these are a few factors that will happen. So some easier tips and tricks that I like, and some of the dietary factors, is when we talk about milk or cow's milk, right? So in Ayurvedic medicine, cow's milk has been, revered like a medicine, and it is one of the best substances when we talk about shukra dhatu, right? So cow's milk can be understood as a complete food because of the vitamins, minerals, and the protein content of it. There's good fat content, there is good carb content, so everything, like all the macros you can find in milk. And I'm talking about grass fed cows, I'm not talking about the inflammatory milk from the carton, right, that you're getting. But if you try to find whole organic milk, even though it's pasteurized in Canada, you cannot find unpasteurized raw milk. But even though you find the pasteurized one, if you can't procure the unpasteurized, try to find whole milk, right? So if you find whole milk, that eventually you can add a few spices like cardamom, you can add a few spices like nutmeg, so to make it easily digestible, right? And that's going to increase your tissues, and that's going to nourish all your tissues. Certain herbs work extremely well. One of my favorite is licorice, and I know I've talked about licorice before. It's known as Yashti Madhu in Ayurveda. So licorice or Yashti Madhu is something that's balancing for both Vata and Pitta, right? And I've used it successfully in a lot of infertility protocols to help my clients, so I've had really great success with it. So if an example is a case study of a man, who came to me for Ayurvedic consultation a few years ago, right? So he was having excess pitta in the body, and he was a pitta prakruti, but the nature of his job was, he was working in the furnace all the time, and his tissues, his body was getting heated up, right? And he had this angry nature and typical, pitta aggravated characteristics. So we started him on what's known as Yashti Madhugruta, or ghee clarified butter that's actually cooked with licorice, right? And we found a lot of great results. His wife conceived in a year, and they were trying for a couple of years. All his bodily symptoms subsided. He was feeling much more focused. He was feeling much more balanced. So something simple like licorice, right? If you can't find the Yashti Madhugruta or licorice ghee, what you can do is you can also put licorice powder in milk, warm it up, maybe add a little bit cardamom to make it digestible, and start drinking it. And it is simple. It's easy to procure. It's also pretty fantastic. One of my other favorite herbs when it comes to male fertility or even andropause or male hormones is known as mucuna pruriens. It is known as kapikachu in Ayurveda, and it also works amazing for dopamine production, which is the lack of which is common in Parkinsonism, right? So mucuna pruriens or kapikachu is one of the amazing herbs which really balances your neurological vata. So any vata dosh, especially your neurological system, is also vata dosh, right? And it helps target it and balance it really well. And there are also improvements seen in Parkinsonism when you use this herb. Any kind of tremors and pill rolling movements, and if you start it earlier on, it can give you a lot of benefit. It also helps nourish your shukra dhatu or your reproductive tissues, and that can work extremely well. Ashwagandha is another fantastic herb which is also very common, right? So having ashwagandha, having shatavari. Ashwagandha, if you are somebody who is under a lot of physical stress or mental stress, and if you're worried about the cortisol production because of long term stress, ashwagandha could be a really good choice for you, right? So that's another herb which works extremely well. So any kind of vata balancing herbs, are going to work extremely well. When we talk about food, I've described milk, cow's milk. Especially if you react to cow's milk, you can always go for goat's milk. The molecular structure of protein is smaller in goat's milk. It's even easier to digest, right? And if you are allergic to casein from cow's milk, which is extremely common, goat's milk might be a better alternative for you. But always boil the milk when you drink it. That's the number one factor to remember. And one of the reasons why people react to milk in Canada is because Canada is a kapha land, right? And Anup Desh is what we call. We are surrounded by forests and trees and large bodies of water, which is kaphagenic in nature. So the land is very kapha. And if you have kapha aggravation in the body, the milk is going to create more allergies and stuff, right? So when we talked about management protocols and dietary, we've discussed milk. Ghee, clarified butter is another fantastic food to have. And ghee always has to be cow's ghee. I've never made goat milk ghee because goat butter is hard to find. But cow milk ghee is going to be one of the best things that's going to help your digestion and nourish all your tissues as well. So that is something which is simple, easily available. And one of my favorite recipes, so for anybody who's physically exhausted, anybody who has done a lot of maybe yard work, and if you feel that your body's getting heated up and you're extremely tired, one of the easier recipes is you can take one date. A dried date is fine, and you can take the date and have it with ghee. So the combination is going to really boost you up and perk you up, right? And that can also work extremely well in dietary protocol for andropause. There are different, if you have excess vata aggravation but you don't have a lot of pitta heightened, another simple thing you can do is have garlic, right? So garlic is extremely vata balancing. It's pungent in nature. It can provoke your pitta if you're using it excessively. And there are also recipes where you can crush garlic and cook it in milk and water, right? So you're cooking it in half milk, half water. Maybe take 2 cloves of garlic, just crush it really nice. Take half a cup of milk, half a cup of water. Boil it till the water evaporates and all you have is milk. You can strain it and you can drink it at a time, and that's extremely vata balancing. Garlic, if you look at the Ayurvedic literature for garlic, it's also considered to be an aphrodisiac. It's also a strong vata balancer. If you are not wanting to have garlic milk and wanting to have more garlic in your diet, always cook it in ghee to reduce the pungency, right? So if you have pitta imbalance, try to cook garlic in ghee or clarified butter. So it will still have its vata balancing effect. It's still going to have all those amazing properties, but it's not going to spike up your pitta, right? So those are a few things we're talking about. There are other herbs as well. So if you have a lot of mental stress and emotional stress, and a lot of the times, when we discuss andropause, there could be an actual diminish in the testosterone, but sometimes, as Ramachandra mentioned, there could be a lot of mental blockages, right? So that time you give what's known as medhya rasayan, or things that promote your intellect and balance your mind and emotions. Herbs like brahmi, bakopa, jyotishmati, so there are various categories of herbs that really promote your mind, right, and stabilize your mind, and you can take those as well. So Shankhapushpi Jatamasi, so Centella asiatica, Bacopa moneri, so there are different ones you can start taking, and those are also beneficial because they're also antioxidants in the body, right? So you can do that. The other factor when we talk about rasayanas is achar rasayan, so behavioral etiquettes, or specific rasayan where you're behaving in a really good way as to avoid any kind of stress to the body, what ends up happening is, when we are on our paths in life, if we do something that's not so great or that's wrong, whether you think you'll get away with it, your body doesn't or your mind doesn't, right? Every person who commits any issue, anything wrong, knows that they're doing wrong, right? Whether they try to hide it from the world, but they know they are doing it something wrong, right? So when you live by a good, what we say, not just attitude, but when you live through this, a good code of conduct, right? If you try not to harm anyone, if you decide not to lie or speak false or gossip and all that, you're not going to get into trouble because you haven't done anything wrong. And that's going to help you with the whole psychoneuroimmunology and the psychology piece of it mainly, right? So you have nothing to fear. Your mind is balanced. It's not going to cause a lot of anxiety because your behavior or your code of conduct is actually grounding you, right? So that's also important to realize. Ramachandra is also saying herbs for cleansing toxins. Yeah, so if you have excess toxin buildup, herbs you can definitely use, but anytime you do cleanses, always work with a practitioner. Don't do boxed cleanses. I don't recommend that because I've seen so many issues with people. They try to do a cleanse and they either end up with a lot of vata aggravation or a pitta aggravation, right? And that's what I've seen in my practice. So when it comes to herbs for cleansing, always work with a practitioner, right? So that's all for today. If you have any questions, you can post it in the links, comment section, and I will be back tomorrow with another topic and we will discuss more about it. Yeah, so Achar Rasayan Sadhurutta is kind of, similar. So I just discussed a little bit. So I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, I would love to discuss menstruation, right? So we are going from menopause to andropause, and then we're going back to menstruation and menstrual cycles. So how do you know you're having a normal cycle or not? Birth control pills, should you take it? Should you not take it? What are the good, things about taking birth control, which I don't think there's any either ways, but what are the side effects of birth control pills? How do you know that you're having a good cycle or a normal cycle, right? Because menstruation is also your body's cleaning cycle, right? So what are certain things to observe? We'll be discussing everything about menstruation tomorrow, same time, 8:30. Thank you all for watching this. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them here. And I'll be back tomorrow around the same time, 8:30. Till then, have a fantastic night. Bye for now.